Hello and welcome to Enroll. In today's class, we will move on to the next 5 marks question, difference between microeconomics and macroeconomics. So this is SAQ 3, distinguish between microeconomics and macroeconomics. Okay, so the subject matter of economics, it has been divided into two parts. One is the traditional subject matter and another one is the modern subject matter. So the traditional subject matter, it is consumption, production, exchange and distribution. And modern subject matter, it is divided into two parts, microeconomics and macroeconomics. Okay, so the microeconomics part is concerned with consumption, production, exchange and distribution, and macroeconomic part is concerned with the national income, the level of employment, or the planning and economic development. So all those things are categorized or coming under the topics macroeconomics. Okay, and it was the first Ragnar Frisch of Oslo University. He was the first person to coin the terms microeconomics and macroeconomics. Okay, so that will be the introduction. So answer, the modern subject matter of economics is divided into two branches, microeconomics and macroeconomics. Ragnar Frisch of the University of Oslo was the first economist to use these terms to explain the study of economics in 1933. Okay, so economics can be viewed either from the micro point of view or from the macro point of view. So all the classical economists, they viewed economics from micro point of view, but the modern economists starting from Keynes, they all viewed economics from the macro point of view. Now what is the difference between the microeconomics and the macroeconomics? Let us check out that. So the differences between microeconomics and macroeconomics, I have divided into two parts. The left hand side is microeconomics and the right hand side is macroeconomics. You can see that clearly. So the first point, the word micro is derived from the Greek word micros, M-I-K-R-O-S, micros. So which means what? That means small. Okay, whereas in macroeconomics, the word macro is derived from the Greek word macros, M-A-K-R-O-S. So that means what? Large. So for what is the first difference? Micro means small and macro means large. Okay, and they both are derived from the Greek words micro, M-I-K-R-O-S, and macros, M-A-K-R-O-S. Okay, now the second one, what is that small? The second point, microeconomics is the study of individual units of the economy, and whereas macroeconomics is the study of economy as a whole. Now what is the meaning here? Microeconomics is the study of individual units of the economy. So that means what? How the individual consumer attains the maximum satisfaction, how the individual firm or the producer gets the maximum profit, how the prices of individual commodity and or service is determined. So everything is analyzed individually. So that's the microeconomics, is the study of individual units of the economy. But whereas what about the macroeconomics? Macroeconomics is studying about the economy as a whole. So what is the total national income of the country? How the it is not studying about the individual income. Macroeconomics is studying about the total national income. So microeconomics studies about the individual income. Macroeconomics studies about the total national income. Microeconomics studies about the individual profit. Macroeconomics studies about the profits of all the producers in the country. Microeconomics studies about the individual savings, but macroeconomics studies about the total savings and investment of the country. Microeconomics studies about the price determination of individual commodity, but the macroeconomics studies about the general price level, that is the prices of all the goods and services in the country. So macroeconomics is the study of economy as a whole. Okay, then the third one, it is microeconomics. It is also known as price theory, whereas macroeconomics, it is also known as income and employment theory. Now why microeconomics is called as a price theory? Because the main subject matter of microeconomics is how the prices of goods and services are determined. So the price determination both in the goods market as well as in the factory market, that is how the price of land is determined, how the price of labor is determined, okay, how the rate of interest is determined, as well as how the prices of each and every individual commodities are determined. So that is the main subject matter of microeconomics. Okay, so that is why microeconomics is also called as price theory. But whereas macroeconomics, it is also called as income and employment theory, because macroeconomics is mostly concerned with how the level of national income in the country can be improved. So it is more concerned with economic growth, economic development, all those things. So when I say economic growth or economic development, it is nothing but the rise in the national income of the country. So how the national income of the country will increase? Only if there is production. If the national output increases, the national income will also increase. So how the national output will increase? Only when the level of employment in the country increases. So it is more concerned with the rise in the national income, the rise in the employment level. Okay, so that is why macroeconomics is also called as income and employment theory. Okay, then the fourth point, it explains price determination in both commodity and factor markets. Just why I mentioned you, that's why microeconomics is called as price theory. How the price is determined in both the commodity market as well as the factor market. That is the main subject matter of microeconomics. Whereas fourth point, macroeconomics, it deals with the total national income, it deals with the total employment, aggregate savings, aggregate means total, the total savings and investment, the general price level and economic development, etc. So all these things are the subject matter of macroeconomic analysis. Okay, now fifth point, it is based on price mechanism which depends on demand and supply. So the fourth point says that it explains price determination in both commodity and factor markets. Now what is how the price is determined? So that is based on the price mechanism. So why do we say price mechanism? Mechanism is something moving up and down. Okay, so the price in the country of each and every individual commodity or service or factor will go up and down depending upon the demand and supply of that respective commodity or factor or service. Okay, so if the demand for a commodity is more than the supply, then the price will go up. If the demand for the commodity is lesser than the supply, then the price will come down. So this mechanism of price going up and down, that is what is called as the price mechanism. So automatically it will just go up and down according to the changes in demand and supply. So that's why the it will, by properly going up and down, it will bring out an equilibrium between the demand and supply. So that is how the price is determined for all the factors, for all the commodities and for all the services according to the microeconomic analysis. So that is why it is based on price mechanism which depends on demand and supply. But whereas macroeconomics, it is not based on individual demand and supply. Macroeconomics, it is based on aggregate demand and aggregate supply, because in the macroeconomic analysis, if the aggregate demand in the country is less, then that will lead to unemployment in the country, and the level of national income in the country will also reduce. So if the country wants to increase the level of employment and income, then the aggregate demand in the country must increase. Okay, so that is macroeconomic analysis. Okay, now the sixth point, it is based on, that is microeconomics, it is based on partial equilibrium analysis, which explains the equilibrium of an individual unit. So what is the meaning of equilibrium? Equilibrium means position of rest. Okay, if one sector, if one individual unit, if one individual commodities demand and supply, they both are equal, then that particular commodity, neither the producer will produce more nor the consumer will consume more at that particular point of time. So already reached the equilibrium. So that doesn't mean that another commodity Y is also in equilibrium, commodity Z is also in equilibrium. Okay, so maybe for example, you take the employees in the software. So the demand for software employees and the supply of software employees, they are equal. So that the demand, so then that sector is in the IT sector, they are in equilibrium. Does that mean that the demand in the educational sector is in equilibrium? The demand for teachers and lecturers and the supply of teachers and lecturers, are they both equal? Does the demand for doctors and the supply of doctors, are they unequal? No, it is not like that, isn't it? So if the demand in software equilibrium is attained in the software sector, that is, it is studying only about the equilibrium position in that particular sector, only in the IT sector. It is not studying about the equilibrium position in the construction sector. It is not studying about the equilibrium position in the educational sector. So it is not studying about the equilibrium position in all the other sectors of the economy. Okay, so that is why it is a partial equilibrium of an individual unit, only one particular unit, only one particular firm, only one particular individual consumer, only one particular individual commodity or service, only one particular individual factor. So that particular factor has attained the equilibrium, that particular sector has attained the equilibrium. So it is only a partial equilibrium analysis. But whereas 6 point macroeconomics, it is based on general equilibrium analysis, which explains the simultaneous equilibrium of all sectors in the economy. So if all the sectors in the economy, as I mentioned, if the software demand for labor force and supply of labor force in the software sector, in the IT sector, if the demand for labor force and the supply of labor force in the educational sector, if the demand for labor force and the supply of labor force in the hospital, then like that, if all the sectors simultaneously attain the equilibrium, then that is what is known as the general equilibrium analysis. That means what? The country as a whole has attained the equilibrium. That's why macroeconomics is concerned with the country as a whole. So because the macroeconomics is studying everything in aggregate, the total demand and supply, the total demand of all the factors and the total supply of all the factors, the total demand for all the goods and services, the total demand supply of all the goods and services. So since it is studying everything in total, if all, so it has to check about the equilibrium position of all the sectors simultaneously. So if that position is happening, that is, if the demand and supply of everything, of all the goods and services, and of all the goods and of all the demand and supply of all the services of all the factors are in equilibrium position, then the country as a whole is in equilibrium position. So that is why it is a general equilibrium analysis. So simultaneously the equilibrium of all the sectors are analyzed under macroeconomic analysis. Okay, so the 7th point, it is a static analysis without time element. So it is a static analysis because it is concerned with the equilibrium position only at particular point of time. So when the price, if the demand and supply of software employees, just now I mentioned, gave you the example. So do you mean to say that it will remain constant throughout the time period? If the demand and supply will not change, will it not change in the software sector? It will change, but at this particular point of time, the demand and supply for software employees are equal. They are in equilibrium. Microeconomics is concerned with only that. The demand and supply of commodity X is in equilibrium. The demand and supply of paddy is equal. The demand and supply of wheat is equal. Okay, the demand and supply of cars are equal. So this particular point of time, the national income of the country has increased 5% last year. So this year also it might increase 5%. Okay, so only at that particular point of time, it is concerned only with this particular point of time. In this year, this is the position, this is the equilibrium position. So it is not taking into account the changes that is going to happen in future. Okay, that is why it is called as the static analysis. But whereas macroeconomic, it is a dynamic analysis with time element, because macroeconomics is concerned with economic growth. Macroeconomics is concerned with economic development of the country. Macroeconomics is concerned with the solving the problems of business cycles, how the inflation, deflation, how the general price level in the country can be controlled. So all these, so when you're talking about economic growth, what is the meaning? When you're talking about the rise in the national income, the rise in employment, that means what? It is in future, the national income in the country will increase. In future, the employment levels in the country will increase. So we are taking future also into consideration under macroeconomic analysis. So it is a dynamic. When you say future, that means the changes, you are giving the provision for changes. So macroeconomics is a dynamic analysis which is giving due importance to time element. Okay, so that is not being done in the microeconomic analysis. So that is why it is a static analysis. And finally, macroeconomics, the 8th point, it was popularized by Marshall, that is Alfred Marshall, whereas J.M. Keynes popularized macroeconomic analysis. So J.M. Keynes popularized macroeconomic analysis by publishing his book General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money in 1936. So the popular theory known as the Keynesian theory of employment. So after the Great Depression in 1930s, after the publication of J.M. Keynes, macroeconomics became popular. So the credit for popularizing macroeconomic analysis goes to J.M. Keynes. Okay, so these are all the differences between microeconomics and macroeconomics. So the conclusion, but in spite of these differences, both microeconomics and macroeconomics are interdependent on each other. So even though there are differences, they both are depending on each other. See, for example, how do you arrive at the national income? You add the individual incomes, you are arriving at the national income. How do we arrive at the general price level? You calculate the prices of each and every commodity or service, or general price level is the average of all the prices of goods and services in the country. So unless you add the whole thing, or each and every individual thing, you will not arrive at the whole thing. So in this way, macroeconomics is depending on microeconomics. So in the same way, microeconomics also depends on macroeconomics. See, for example, if an individual producer is determining the price for his commodity, for example, you take in one particular area, what is the rent for the house in that particular locality. So if all the other owners, if they are charging, say for example 30,000 per month or 25,000 per month, this particular this particular owner, he cannot charge 50,000, isn't it? Because the area also matters, the locality also matters, apart from the size of the house. Okay, so considering all the factors, so in this particular area, this is the price for vegetables. So suddenly one person cannot say, the price for the tomatoes is 70 rupees, when the other vegetable vendors, they are all selling at the rate of 10 rupees or 20 rupees per kg. Okay, so what is the market rate? When you say market rate, that is macroeconomics. So the individual person also determining the price based on the market rate, even though it depends upon the individual demand and supply. So in this way, microeconomics also depends on macroeconomics, but still there are differences between both micro and macroeconomics. Okay, so this is also one of the important 5 marks question from the board exam point of view. Okay, so if you find this video useful, please like, share and also subscribe to my YouTube channel. Okay, so until my next class, take care, bye bye.